Hello and welcome back to the 1904 Club, the Hull City podcast, of course, from the Hull Daily Mail. Burnsy, Fletch, in his best Tony Pulis impression, and Prutts are all with me today. We'll start with Prutts. How the devil are you, my old chum?
I'm good. It's disconcertingly warm, isn't it? Which is throwing me a little bit. It's knocking off my inner kind of body temperature. But other than sweating a little bit more than I normally do, I'm all good.
Me and some friends, we stayed at Raywell Hall last week. Nice, and it was. This isn't a PR thing for the.
No, tell us what it was like. I said it was a glorified ginormous scout.
It was really good. We had a great. We went to Scarborough on Thursday, saw the Northern Lights, which was amazing. Love Scarborough, and then we went to Raywell, and the weather was decent. And I think Saturday night we actually sat out and had a barbecue. So I know it's warmed up now, but it was Baltic on Saturday night. Out the hot tub into the barbecue, and it was loved it. Absolutely loved it. What a lovely part of the world.
Quick vote on hot tubs, yay or nay? I'm a definite nay.
Oh my Christ. Burnsy's a definite yay. Fletch,
no,
definite.
I'm not.
Aren't you, Burnsy?
No, I'm not. I'm not a yay. I'm not a yay.
I thought you'd be well into your speedos into the hot tub.
No. There is one outside there, but it's been there 3 years. I've been in it once, I think.
Lockdown purchase, that stinks up.
Fletcher Pulis, what about you?
Anyway.
I don't mind one. Have I got the finance to buy one? Probably not. I think people would start talking if I had one on a first floor flat.
That would be instead of a sofa in the living room.
Yeah. Every time I'll book the podcast and I'll just be there in the hot tub. So, all right, lads, how's everything this week?
So basically, Prutts, the end of season get together in a hot tub is not going to happen.
As a spectator sport, I'll give it a go, but as an active participant, you can count me out.
Anyway, we digress because we need to cover the big news of the morning, really, that Tan Kesler has left his position as vice chairman of Hull City. Burnsy, over to you.
Yeah, well, let me read some of the tweets that are coming into the 1904 Club because it'll lead us into some of the questions in and around this because it was the statement came out this morning saying it was mutual consent. Craig Belcher has got the wind up already. Cracks appearing. I fear Adjun is about to sell up. More and more bizarre decisions. HCAFC Thoughts says just interested to know the reason. Seems quite knee-jerk. Falling out seems the most likely reason. ? Bill Robbins says the statement is very blunt, suggesting there's been a fallout. Doesn't look great, but I suspect we'll hear more in the coming days. Matty Hayward says clarity would be nice. People have been slowly getting a little more nervous and worried since May about the state of the club, Adjun potentially selling up, etc. And I'll read one more. Adjun seems to be a hard act to manage. He's probably had enough of the stress that comes with that. And 1904 says, or did he have to leave us to maintain his position on the board? This is the EFL board. So, Baz, what's that's just a little flavour of what's coming into us. What's the story here?
Yeah, I think it's probably something that's been brewing for a little while. Without going into too much detail at this stage, because I think it's important that Adjun will probably say his piece over the next couple of days. We know he's not one for sitting back and hiding away when big decisions are made. Obviously, when Liam lost his job back in May, Adjun was very quick to come out and talk to various parts of the media. We of course had the fan Q&A at the MKM Stadium. So I suspect potentially by the time this goes out that Adjun has said something. I think I would probably urge a bit of caution here that Tan has been around the club for since the takeover. Basically, I remember meeting him with Adjun quite a long time before the takeover actually went came to pass, and Tan at that stage was expecting right up until pretty much it happened. He was planning on being, I think, director of football or something in that area, I should say, and then obviously. He then became vice chairman. Look, I would just say it's not something to get too concerned about. I don't think it will impact the day-to-day running of the football club particularly, really. I think Adjun is obviously the figurehead and has got people there that will run the club. He's obviously got the English side of Hull City that manage things day to day at the stadium. Obviously, Joe Clutterbrook is a hugely pivotal part of the day to day operations. So, I don't think it's going to make a huge difference going forward. In terms of his role on the EFL board, that ceases to exist. So basically, Tan is no longer on the EFL board, and it will now be up to Championship clubs to vote on his replacement. I know that sometimes when this news breaks, it catches a lot of people by surprise. I would just say I don't think it certainly hasn't caught me, but perhaps the timing of it being announced at 9 o'clock this morning caught me by surprise, in the sense that, I didn't expect it at 9 o'clock, but having heard some things over the last few months, I just can't say I'm surprised personally. And I think the club, I just don't think it will have a negative impact on the club going forward. So we'll have to wait and see. And I'm sure in time, as I say, Ajun will say his piece. I'm sure the club, I've spoken to the club this morning. They've made it clear that at this stage they're not prepared to make any further comment. But we do know that their communication is generally very good. So they will, at some point, I'm sure, as they alluded to in their very, very brief and to the point statement, as some correspondents have already mentioned, they will say their piece.
I ask a quick question, just and I appreciate it's sensitive. Have they fallen out then, or are they just going in different directions?
Has there been a falling out? I think they've just probably come to a point where they want to go in different directions. There's obviously, I suspect there's been some issues behind the scenes. I don't think I'm breaking any confidentiality in saying that. Look, when somebody in an executive role suddenly leaves, on the outside, it suddenly appears to leave, and the statement is very short and to the point. There was no fluffiness in there. There was no, here's a list of Tan's achievements over the last 2 years or 2.5 years. Let's all have a cuddle and thank him. There was nothing like that. So I think the fact that the statement was quite short and sharp suggests that, all has not been well between the owner and the vice chairman. Now, I haven't been party to those conversations. I wasn't in the three-way phone call between Ajun and Tan when the decision was made. So I'm speculating.
Is there a hierarchy thing here? Because obviously, knowing that there's an owner of a football club and Tan being the vice chairman, did you just say?
Yeah. So
there's, in our heads that don't know too much about the inner machinations of a football club, you kind of go, well, obviously, if someone's leaving, Ajun's sacked him. That's how we kind of process it very simply, I think. I think the six-line statement is straight to the point. But then let's not forget, when it is football, we get, and there probably is something in this, but we get caught up potentially in it being a falling out, or someone's walked out, or a boss has said to someone down the food chain, right, that's it, you're done, pack your bag, see you later. Let's not forget that these two are both very successful businessmen before they even came to Hull City. They'll be used to operating at a level where there's a thanks, shake your hand, see ya. That's the kind of cutthroat nature of how business works, doesn't it? Yeah. And you don't become a successful, wealthy man or part of a big business without being able to do that. So they might read that. And again, the other side about it is as well, and not knowing anything about it and second guessing. Yes, we're talking about English football and an English football club, but we're talking about people that come from a different part of the world. There's a different culture attached to that. What we might see is it's quite a blunt six-line statement. They might be businessmen that are long in the tooth that go, well, yeah, that's just the way it goes. It might sound blunt, but what's the point of fluffing it up? He's left. It's mutual consent. Thanks for everything. Move on. From a Turkish point of view, and like I said, this is me second guessing and not knowing anything about business in a different part of the world. That they might look at that and go, well, what's the problem? This is what's happened. This is where we're going. Facts. Moving on to other facts. Moving on. So it's the timing of it, the swiftness of it does seem pretty blunt, and that's from the outside looking in. And we all raise our eyes with the mutual consent one, don't we? And only more so because of what happens when a manager leaves. Everyone goes, well, it says mutual consent, but we think X, Y, and Z. Sometimes mutual consent means that you've got to nod your head and sign that, because then you get the rest of the money that you're owed. If you come out and say, well, no, I got sacked. Sorry, you breached something that we discussed there in private. You're not getting the rest of whatever. That's a very basic and simplistic way of putting it. But the mutual consent one is not a doff of the cap. It's a legal wording that I think protects both parties, doesn't it, really? Which you do understand. So given what we've seen from these two operators since they've been at City, and given sometimes how extrovert Ajan can be, this could seem pretty blunt. But like I said, you don't become successful in business without having a real hard edge to you. And these two obviously have. And
that's ultimately the thing. I think Ajan has been... he's spoken at length over the duration and throughout the duration of his ownership of Hull City that he isn't afraid to make big decisions, and that sometimes involves people close to him. Shotta Arveladze was a close personal friend of Ajan. He appointed him as manager and sacked him, 2 years ago. So it was what we know from him, and as you allude to there, Prutts, you don't become a hugely successful businessman in your own right in terms of Ajan Media as he has without making difficult decisions. And ultimately, at some point, there are going to be people close to you that you work with that you decide for the better of your organisation, you need to move them on. And he's obviously decided, and it is Ajan's decision, he's obviously decided that for Hull City's future, Tan needs to be moved on.
And the thing is with this, Tan's 45? He's been associated with City for almost 3 years?
Yeah.
So he's existed in a different form. Professionally, you'd say for possibly 25 years before Hull City had ever heard of him, or he got involved in English football. This might be a toe that he's dipped in and gone, I like it to a degree. It's not working. I've had enough. Ajan, pleasure, mate. See you down the road. Move on. There's so like we said, maybe from quite a traditional English football sensibility, we're going, well, that doesn't seem very nice. Nice might not even be a word that's operative in this particular business transaction. It's that happened. This happened. Now we're going that way.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see which way they go. I don't believe a replacement is imminent. But Ajan will have his own ideas, of course, of how he wants. Of how he wants to proceed forward. But
is he going to steam in and assume those responsibilities? Do you think?
Well, like I say, I don't think it really changes too much in terms of, Tan did what Tan did, but I don't necessarily think they suddenly lose the ability to negotiate transfers. I don't think that's going to be a problem. I don't think they suddenly, the club isn't going to stop selling shirts or stop, Tan's involvement. Tan did what Tan did, but I think the wheels of Hull City were turning before Tan arrived, have turned during Tan's tenure, and will continue to turn. And I don't think it will be massively impacted. Go on, Burnsy.
I was just going to say we all wish him well, because he came and did the forum with us, and in terms of dealing with him, he's been excellent. I'm conscious that Fletch is probably Googling, can I get a jacuzzi in a one-bedroom flat? So let's bring Fletch into this.
You can get a whirlpool bath.
If you dream it, it'll happen.
Baz has looked. Fletch, where are you on this? Do you see this as significant?
It's hard to categorise, because I don't think any of us would have had this piece of news being on the bingo card of Hull City 24-25. It was a little bit of a shock when you open your phone, you see the news, and you think, well, what's brought that about? But as Baz alludes to, there might possibly be something bubbling away that's not public knowledge. We don't know that. So we're almost feeling in the same position as the fans, really. And obviously, when there's no clear reasoning for why this action has been taken, then that does create a little bit of concern or worry, nervousness, more negative connotations related to it. But the thing that when try and think about it, one thing that obviously Tan was very heavily involved with was transfers. And is it possible to agree and suggest that there might be a bit of aggro in how quick the transfers went through this season. Obviously, it's not just Tan's fault. There's other people, other parties involved as well. But that could be something. Just to throw that in there as a possible suggestion.
Well,
do you mean
say that?
Do you mean they didn't go quick, Fletch?
Just,
or go on, Mezzi, sorry.
Can I just because somebody's said that very thing to us, Prutts. Harry Bulliman says, I think it shows the disappointment Adjun had in Tan over the summer transfer window. It was slow and stagnant until Adjun got involved. The important thing now is to get his replacement right. I'll come to a potential replacement in a minute. Prutts, you were going to say something in terms of what Fletch was saying?
Just the time frame that you mentioned there, was it because things seemed slow in comparison to other clubs? Is that what the frustration was? Because ultimately you'd think that. Well, I mean, it's an old Gary Neville trope, isn't it? About the people at the top are responsible for what happens underneath them, even though what happens underneath them they're trusting people to do, if that makes sense. So he's brought Tan in to do a certain thing. But if he wants things to go quicker, then ultimately it's his responsibility to have what he thinks is the best person. Hence the fact he said, "Cheers, Liam. That was enough. See you later." So ultimately the frustration potentially with the transfers is that then reflected in who he's put in place, Fletch? Is that what with regards to what you said about the time frame of transfers? Is that what the frustration was?
Well, the way that I look at Hull City's transfers this season is we've come across more as a laggard than a trendsetter. There was this talk in the summer of, wait until the 20th of August and you'll start to see, because of the Euros and this, that, and the other. But, yes, some of those players who have international experience, it falls into that category. But I think there has been a knock-on effect from when the pen has been put on paper with some of these signings, because you've been left in a position where you're playing catch-up with other clubs to a certain degree. Now, obviously, some clubs will not have brought in players with international calibre or come from abroad. We can't, and I can't, put this squarely on Tan Kesler's door for this particular situation. There's all sorts of different people and situations that relate to the timing of a transfer. But that's one thing that comes to the surface for me as to a possible reason this season for his possible dismissal in this case.
Can I say a quick thing on that, and then Baz might give us some insight on it? From my point of view, yeah, I can sort of see that argument, but my feeling was at the time that the owner, Adjun, had taken his eye off the ball and was concentrating on Fenerbahce and getting players into the Fenerbahce squad rather than, which is fine. He's involved with both clubs, but that was to the detriment of City. And I know he has. I seem to remember being at Tim Walter's initial press conference, and he had a little quip about Tan being slow, and it was just a throwaway, just a bit of banter, perhaps, but there might be something in that. But I felt Adjun was a bit slow. He'd been a bit distracted by the Fenerbahce thing, and that's why things weren't happening quick enough. Baz, give us a perspective, give us the truth of the situation. Or perhaps Fletch wants to say something first.
Well, I just wanted to say, partially relative, is from the time that they've been involved with the football club, I think it's fair to say when it comes to transfers and announcing transfers in particular, they've been very quick on the trigger to announce things which possibly haven't been done. Now, who's to blame there? Is it Adjun wanting to get as much media attention as possible straight away, or is there something going on behind the scenes in terms of paperwork that's slowing something down when Adjun believes that something is already completed? That's another thing that can obviously create some frustration if people aren't on the same wavelength when it comes to publishing something, when it comes to a signing. On that
note, I think on the transfers, perhaps there's maybe they were guilty of saying a deal was done when they got a gentleman's agreement, perhaps without the paperwork, without the ink being dry on the paperwork and the deal being confirmed by the Football League. Perhaps if that's an accusation. I think this summer, I just feel like this summer has been a bit of a mess. It's been a bit of a scattergun approach to recruitment. Obviously, Lee Darnborough going. I don't think I genuinely don't think that has helped the football club. I know Lee sometimes, from one or two fans, gets a bad rep, but I think if you look at Lee's record since he came to the football club, given the fact that the club had to go through COVID, we're in all sorts of difficulties, embargoes, etc., etc. I think generally Lee's involvement was very, very good, and I think him going had a negative impact, if I'm brutally honest, in that period. Jared Dublin has obviously now come into the role. He will front up. I guess he will front up recruitment. That's his job with Stuart White, the head of scouting, and the other scouts within that network that the club have. I would imagine that Jared would front up recruitment going forward. He will be the guy that deals with Ajun and Mertan and Mustafa, Barry Pardo, and of course Tim Volter. So I just don't think it. I don't think in terms of recruitment it changes anything. It might even streamline the process. It might make the process a bit smoother, a bit easier, because you've not got Jared and Tan doing negotiations, and then also Ajun as well. Maybe it makes it a bit easier. I don't know. We'll have to find that out going forward. But I do think this summer was a bit of a look. I don't think, and Prutts, this is your. You could probably come in on this, but I don't think clubs are genuinely successful when they're bringing in 15, 16, 17 new players every summer and shipping out 15 to 20. I don't think that is a sustainable, successful model going forward. And I think what City need to be doing going forward is having less churn. And unfortunately, when you change manager, and they have changed manager fairly frequently, if you think that Ajun came in almost 3 years ago, Grant McCann was the manager, gone. Obviously, Shotta came in, gone. Andy Dawson had 8 games or whatever it was, gone. Liam then came in, gone. We're now into Tim Walter, and who knows how that is going to play out over the course of time. We'll find out, won't we? But I think City need to get to a stage where they have some stability in the manager's seat, and they have stability, a level of stability in recruitment, and that's obviously helped by signing Charlie Hughes and Abu Kamara on permanent deals. Though Liam Miller and Balumi, those things are going to be a good thing. But I think they need to get away from this every summer, this level of churn.
I've been intrigued to know overall the numbers in and out under Ajun, and I'm not saying that
huge, it's got to be huge.
I'm not chucking that curveball in for someone not to answer me and me go whoa, whatever. But that sense of, you're right, it's for continuity. But then the thing that you're trying to quantify is what is continuity to City, because obviously dropping out the division, getting themselves back into the division, key players coming and going. All clubs at this level are a selling club. So if the price is right and the demand is there, then they'll be asking, and clubs and players will be moved on. It is a high volume. It seemingly feels, doesn't it? And the question then comes about what is the quality that's coming in, that then suddenly a year later, that quality that was deemed to be better than what was before is now not as good as what's coming in. So it's a constant cycle, isn't it, of
He's frozen.
He has frozen. And he was saying it was warm earlier, and now he's frozen. He'll have to jump in. He'll have to jump in the hot tub and warm himself up, won't he? We'll be back with the frozen Prutts in a minute. CJ has sent us this at the 1904 Club on Twitter, which is he says, did he play up front? Loads of good staff have left behind the scenes. As long as Ehab doesn't come back to run the club, we'll be fine. It's what happens on the pitch that's important. So we'll probably talk about the football in a minute. Can I just say, I don't know whether I read this from Harry Bullerman or the last bit. It says, the important thing now is to get his replacement right. So I'm just wondering whether it's worth me having a shave and blowing the dust off me BA honours degree in business studies, specialism, the financial management of the Football League clubs. I don't know whether it's worth it. Might get the old CV together, see what happens. Thanks for your immediate support, fellas.
Yeah. I mean, what's the worst they can say is no, isn't it, Burnsy? You know, but yeah, I mean, like I say, I agree. I think there's always that danger, isn't there, of that mass overreaction of panic, of everything must be behind the scenes chaos. The club's about to be all that. You know, the club isn't about to be sold. Let's get that one. Tan going doesn't mean Adrian is now going to sell. That's clearly not the case. So I think we can nip that one in the bud. Look, ultimately, people leave football clubs. Some leave for personal reasons, you know, family, location, different jobs, had better offers. Others leave because there's disagreements behind the scenes and there's friction and people. Football is like any other industry in that sense. People come and go, and I don't think.
Someone's got a train going past their house.
I have, yes. I like I say, I think we need to urge caution. I don't think we need to overreact and think suddenly the walls are going to cave in, because they're not. The guys moved on. It's not the end of the world. You know, Hull City will still open up tomorrow and will still play Sunderland on Sunday. I don't think. Yeah, I just don't think we need to panic. I don't think we need to worry too much, and trust that the club have made a decision that they've made. And yeah, the point about getting the next appointment right, if that's what Adrian decides to do, he may well decide that actually the expertise I've got in the football club already is there. Maybe I can get now Tan's out, now Tan's gone. Maybe that's an opportunity for somebody within the football club that actually can step up and can take on more or have a greater say. I don't know, but Hull City is a club that have good people within it that perhaps maybe it's that maybe they can take on that role, or they can. Yeah, I just, like I say, my message for what it's worth is just, let's not panic. He's moved on. You know, let's crack on and see what happens in the future.
You're right. You wanted a point to make, and then I know Prutts is back in a minute. He's been in the hot tub too. Oh, now Fletch has
been
gone.
in the hot tub. Yeah, I'm shocked.
I thought it was you like having the same approach as Hull City to this podcast, getting rid of one player. See you later. Then Curtis Davies pops up for 2 minutes. Then he goes. Then Jake Livermore pops up for 2 minutes. Yeah, yeah.
By mutual consent.
Fletch, yeah, exactly.
Point, and then I think we should talk a bit of football.
Yeah, very quick point. Very rough count from what Prutts was talking about in number of transfers that have come in and out. If you include things like players that have gone out on multiple loans and some youth players, 57 in and 61 out is what I get the numbers at in the time that they've been in.
So, and that's in less than 3 years. So 3 years in January.
That's a lot.
And that's and ultimately, Fletch. That's yeah, Prutts. I guess. When you want the reality of being a championship club with fairly, if we're honest, fairly mediocre income, you know, they don't have mega gates. They're averaging 20,000, and the ticket prices. I did a piece yesterday actually praising City as they are one of the cheapest ticket prices in the division. They're phenomenal for what they do for their fans, but their income is relatively modest. It isn't huge. So is there a case of actually, when you are a club that have come up from League One, you have a squad that you want to try and improve year on year, and you then change manager who then wants to bring his own flavour of player in? Is that and you haven't got the benefit of parachute payments? Is that perhaps are we being a bit harsh on Hull City for having that level of player turnover when you're using loans and loans come in, loans go back?
Yeah,
some are very permanent, some don't. Is that part of the course of being a fairly mid-range championship club?
Yeah, I think that would probably where I'd land on, because if I think kind of historically going back 20 odd years, and if I was in a football club that had that high level of turnover, then I think there would be a sense of scratching your head. It wasn't like that at Nottingham Forest. It wasn't like that at Southampton. When I went to Leeds, when they were in administration, that was the first time I'd really seen it, by virtue of the fact that they didn't have any money. They couldn't offer any contracts. And I was part of them, like just a huge sway of waifs and strays coming and trying out and trialing and some staying, some going. But I think probably over the last 15 years, if you come away from the Premier League and the very top part of the Premier League, without knowing other teams' numbers, like Fletcher's very helpfully laid out there for us with City, I just think it's the nature of the beast. I would say potentially contracts at a certain level are getting shorter. Therefore, you do have players that come and go. I think that short-termism of what clubs want is very much the MO because of finances, because of how quickly a club can go from really punching above its weight in the Championship to fighting for its life and then suddenly in League One. I think, even if you look at the history of Hull City over the last 20 years with FA Cups and Premier League and the Championship and League One, and it just goes to show how if football feels more transient than ever now, don't you think? Like these players that stayed at your football club for years and years and years don't exist anymore. We looked at players that had moved on in the summer, and obviously players that have stayed. The likes of Louis, who's just clocked up over 150 appearances at one club. That genuinely does stand out. You're Christ almighty, that's a lot of games to be playing at one club nowadays. So maybe it just is. Maybe it's not seen as something either positive or negative. It's just seen as that's the way things are. And when you get different owners, an ownership that's moved around, and managers that move around, and the ability to, on the one hand, to twist it into a positive, it shows that Hull City can attract players. The debate off the back of that is whether these players are good enough to get them to where they think they should go, i.e. up into the top end of the Championship. But you look at that team, and it was always that, and coming off the back of obviously of the anniversary that we've seen, but that glory team that got from League Two all the way up to the Premier League with quite a hefty bulk of the same players all the way through. I just think it, and this is me not just looking back and coming away from the actual discussion in hand. That goes to show how special that job was that happened. That was an incredible thing to do because it doesn't happen everywhere. There's similar sized teams to Hull City that are still sat in League Two going, oh Christ, we'd love to be able to do that. But they did it with a splattering of stardust as they got further up the food chain. And maybe without it being magical and special, but without it being terrible, at this moment in time, City sit where City should sit, with that type of people in and out, that churn, that quality of player that they've got. There are some very good players. There's some good players that are just Championship players, which is no disgrace. They're still better than 95% of the population that wants to become a footballer. But the next debate being, well, if Ashton's come to take the team into the Premier League, constant churn, the level of player that they're bringing in, does it get them there? I don't know.
That's a good point. And when I say mid-range, of course, what I mean by that is you look at the club's income, the attendances. They are, it isn't easy to pay to keep squads together. And obviously, what you can't argue with is the ambition of the ownership. Ajun, as you say, Prutts, wants to get the club into the Premier League. He made the management change last season because he felt that, despite going close to the playoffs, he felt that a different approach could do that, whether it's this year or next year.
Just sorry to put in again, and I'll shut up in a sec. But and the thing that I always find fascinating / terrifying with this is if we all talk about football and everyone's got a team that they love and follow and it's very, very special to them. And then in the media we talk about owners and good owners and bad owners and what they bring to a football club. What they actually do bring away from holistically what we all know and love about football is hopefully deep pockets of the thing that genuinely changes football clubs. And I mean that with the greatest respect to fans, because without the fans, as we know, it's a game, it's 22 fellas arsing around. The spectacle becomes the spectacle. When the fans are there, they make the game and this lovely, gorgeous passion that we all know and love what it is. But this is a very wealthy man that's put a lot of money in. So his way of doing it is his way of doing it. His experience of football is an English football coming into it. Is now he's doing this a little bit off the cuff because of his experience thus far. So that the teething problems that we perceive, or the way that the transfers, the way that the run of the football club has gone, maybe strikes of a fella in English football still kind of looking around going, well, I want to know as much about this, but I'm still just. It would be a very human thing for him to say and put his hands up and go, "There's still a lot of this. I'm just working on day by day," which would be totally understandable because how much was he putting in at the end of last season? A week?
Well, over the course of the year, it was over £20 million, wasn't it?
Which is, I mean, and in football that doesn't seem much, but it's a staggering amount of money. So everyone looks at the owner for answers, and it's about who motivates the motivator, isn't it? So you look at him going, he might be looking around going, Christ, it'd be nice to get an Andy to know where we're going and what we're going to do and get the right players in. And I've trusted him to get the right players in. They're not quite the right players. He might want to spend millions and millions of pounds, but as he knows, potentially that kind of kills you further down the line. So there's so many plates for him to spin, and there's so many good things that he's done that just right now, off the back of Liam going, now Tan's gone, you just hope that well of goodwill doesn't run dry, because let's not forget, it wasn't that long ago that the vitriolic opinion of the Hull City ownership was absolutely killing the team because no one was watching, nobody wanted to go. And there was that huge divide between the two that Ajan's done so well to try and pull together.
That's a really good point. And that you make, Prutts, actually, Ajan he's coming up, in January, it will be the 3-year anniversary. He's only owned the football club for less than 3 years. And that's a really good point. Yes, he was involved at Sittard, yes, and he would say, I've been involved in football for decades, and that's all true. But being involved in football and watching a lot of football and going as a guest to Fenerbahce and being close to Ali Koch and etc.
Different thing altogether.
That's great, but none of that can prepare you for what it is like being the floor guy, the guy that has to pay to sign off the checks at the end of every week, that has to make big decisions about your manager, about ticket prices, about the shirts, about transfers, about everything about the football club is so important. And that, for me, is why it's so important that Ajan gets, whatever he does going forward, whether he replaces Tan Kesler or whether he promotes from within or whether he thinks actually we can get by, it's so important that he gets the people around him that can help him, that understand and know English football, because it is different to Turkish football. It is different to other. Tim Walter says this every week, that football is the same basically, but English football and the way it operates is different. And I think Ajan needs around him people that understand English football, that can challenge him, and that's not something that is always easy with successful businessmen. But they do need people that have expertise, that understand the nuances of the English game and the way the business operates in English football. And I think going forward, that is something that's really, really important for the football club, of course, but also for Ajan himself, because he does have a huge, he is, as he says himself, he's crazy busy. He has, a successful media empire that needs to continue to be successful. Otherwise, everything else collapses. He's obviously got his involvement with Fenerbahce. He's got the involvement with Maribor. He's got Hull City. He also presents on telly. That's quite a time-consuming thing as well. So, I just want.
That's easy. That's the easiest part about his remit. That's not real life.
I want for him, for his benefit, but also for this wonderful football club to have the people around him that he can trust, because trust is hugely important. Without it, you've got nothing. That will be good for Hull City. So if he is going to make an appointment, I want it to be somebody that perhaps is not out of his current network of people in Turkey or what. And yes, he might feel that somebody he knows that's been involved in Fenerbahce or whatever might be the best person for the job, and it is about having the best person for the job, however that looks. But I do think it's so important to have people around that understand, English football and the nuances of that. So, look, as I say, let's urge caution. Let's not get too het up about Tan leaving. I don't think suddenly the walls are going to cave in.
Fast forward to Ajan's, one of his daughters being appointed as executive vice chairwoman. and head of recruitment with just coming in out of nowhere. Boom, done.
Don't say that, Prutts. Don't say that. They need to appoint somebody. Should we move on and talk a bit of football? We might talk Aaron Connolly, who and there is some suggestion he might make his debut at the weekend as the current leaders of the Championship come to City Sunderland. I'm fascinated by the how the hell Sunderland ended up with their manager, given that he had a relegation on his CV in France and had finished the 10th the season before. Do we know much about him, Fletch?
I know that from his time in France.
I know how to pronounce his name.
Régis Lebris.
There you go.
Lebris. That's TV for you.
Because I would have gone, as you did, Fletch, I'd have gone without the S's because it was French, but it is Régis Lebris.
It's Régis Lebris.
How did he end up there?
Well,
nothing on his CV.
From my understanding, looking at let's go back to when Tony Mowbray was in charge of Sunderland, he had a very young squad, as he did with Blackburn Rovers. And I think one of the selling points of this manager was when he was in France, he preferred to work with a younger based squad. So that's one tick in the box. He's a very open attacking manager. I think if you look at how many goals his team scored, but also conceded, he played entertaining football, which I think is what the Sunderland ownership wants with their French connections as well. So they will have a better understanding than what us four have got on the surface. But he seems to have got in straight away and made an incredibly positive impact because they are scoring goals. They're the highest scorers in the league with 18. So he's been able to unshackle them from last season. Sunderland is one of those football clubs with a huge fan base, a fan base that, I say this with caution, that Hull City could only dream of, because obviously we would all love to see Hull City having 40,000 plus in the MKM if it was possible. And that would make such a big difference. Sunderland have been crying out for a striker for a long time. And this manager, with someone like Chris Rigg playing up front now, who could be the next teenage sensation of the Championship, he seems to be a good fit to be able to try and nurture these younger players that Sunderland seem to have. And I think that's why they went for him in the summer.
The real impressive part about it is so far is it's predominantly the same team. Obviously, Jack Clark's moved on and Romain Mundle's stepped into his shoes. But by and large, it's the same set of players. Some good acquisitions. Chris Mepham in defence has been fantastic, and Luke O'Nien continues to be very, very good. But
Alan Brown as well.
Yeah, he's enjoying his time up there. We did an interview with him where he discussed one game where the players in game made a change of formation, which obviously is an ex-pro of a certain age. We all went, not sure about that. And he was quite very comfortable with it. I mean, possibly he was comfortable with it because the players did it and they ended up losing the game. So that reinforces what the manager's actual way of say, listen to me, you get it right, make your own decisions, you're knackered. But there is a hell of a lot to like about them. The question and the fingers that are pointed at, a little bit similar to Ipswich, only a little bit in the sense of setting a pace early doors and can they maintain it, even though it's only in the autumnal part of the season. But there's plenty there for Hull City to be very, very mindful of. And it's a funny one, isn't it, Burnsy? Because you talk about where managers come from and what they do and their path towards getting to where they currently are. Sometimes they can be head scratchers. You look at or hear about interview techniques. You hear about what the management remit is, especially with Sunderland, as Fletcher alludes to. It's about working with younger players, budgetary restrictions, as we mentioned with City as well. And it's at the moment, it's so far so good. There's the fan base up there seems very, very happy with what they're seeing. And given Sunderland's chopping of Tony Mowbray when they did, and the subsequent drop off the back of that, they needed to make sure that this next appointment was good. And as I said, so far so good. Big test for City, this one.
We'll maybe come to Aaron Connolly in a minute. Baz, how does City shape up? I suspect you're probably seeing the gaffer this afternoon or tomorrow. How do they shape up? Team selection will be coloured by who comes back from international duty, etc., etc.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting, isn't it? They so obviously they had their week in Turkey last week, which by all accounts went really well. They beat Alanya Sport 2-0. Matty Jacob and Mason Burstow scored the goals. I mean, it should have been 7 or 8 with the amount of chances they had. I mean, and I know Tim said after the game that he was pleased with the result and the performance, but frustrated with their lack of clinical edge, and that's something that we've spoken about for a period of time. But I'm really intrigued by Sunday afternoon, to be honest, because I know Sunderland at home have been very good. Away, they've lost a couple of on the road, so that there's obviously there's an opening there for City. But how they respond to what happened at Norwich, because they were thumped 4-0. It should really have been 5 had Sargent not blasted the penalty against the post. So, and they were outplayed. They were outthought. And I know we've talked about that already. So I'm really curious to see how they respond to that. So they've obviously got the home thing right, in the sense they beat Cardiff, and that was the first home win since April. I mean, we've only had 3 in 2024 so far. So, it'd be nice to get another one, particularly with Burnley to come on Wednesday night. Go on, Burnsy.
Yeah, I was just going to, talking to the international players, I was intrigued because, and I know you've run quotes from Zambrano. We'll get into the meat of this matter because he faces this potential doping ban. But I'm thinking, well, his country have actually selected him while he's under the threat of a doping ban. I take that as quite a positive sign that he won't get a doping ban. What do we know about?
Yeah, I think there was a feeling, and there has been a feeling, that if he was going to get banned, it would be a 2-year ban, and there would be a potential for that to be backdated back to March. But yeah, I think I was surprised that he was selected for Ecuador. I know he was on the bench. He's not played, has he? He was on. They drew with Uruguay 0-0 last night in a qualifier. But yeah, for him to be in the squad and then for him to be put up for interview, I thought was really interesting. I know he did a 20-minute interview as well with Ecuadorian telly. So I think that could be quite telling, and he sounded really positive. I know that behind the scenes there's an awful lot of work going on to try and sort this out, and it is just a case of we're going to have to wait and see. But for the boy himself, I think he's been doing. I don't think he's been amazing since he's come, but he's 20, coming to a different country where he's having English lessons, which is great. He's trying to pick up the lingo. I think he's doing okay given everything around him and that kind of hanging over him, that potential knowing that he could get a ban, whether it's 6 months, a year, 2, up to 2. I think that must be really, really, difficult for him. So we'll have to wait and see. But in terms of the playing Sunday, I think obviously helps. Casey Palmer and Liam Miller. I know Liam hadn't got an assist for Canada. So I would imagine they'll be back. I mean, the players only came back to training on Wednesday. So what is it, Thursday? Yesterday. So they landed in England on Saturday. They were given Sunday, Monday, Tuesday off because I know he worked them hard out in Turkey. Although they still had time to play beach volleyball, which looked a lot of fun. But yeah, it's going to be interesting what he does, isn't it? Does he make changes? Does he stick with it? I just feel they've got to find a chance. I would think so. He's the player. He's going to be he's the player that we're going to be speaking to on Wednesday. On Friday afternoon. We speak because he's got him doing a double session today. I think on Thursday. So press is now Friday afternoon. So we'll be speaking to Tim and Charlie Hughes. But yeah, I think Charlie Hughes, and this is something actually that we put out on social media a couple of days ago, asking for people to throw in their what they feel would be their strongest 11s, because he's got a massive squad. A squad of it's if you factor in Harry Vaughan, who is part of the squad. I know he's featuring for the 21s, but I think they've got a squad of 32 players now, which is mind-boggling. And I know Gustavo Puerta impressed in the game, the friendly game. I know obviously Rachopi and Carl Rushworth were given run-outs in goal. But he has got a lot of options. Obviously, Alzate, I would imagine, is going to be a starter. João Pedro's looked decent in the couple of cameos we've seen, both at Norwich and then out in Turkey. he's got too much going on. There's too many players to keep happy, but he's got a big squad. He's got options, hasn't he?
I don't think even he's in a position to say this is my best side, and certainly we aren't, because we haven't seen them all, because they've not been fit, they've come in late and everything like that, and it's going to take a little time for him to find out what he's got. I just think he's got to sort out a bit of midfield solidity for me, but I think that is partly down to the way he plays. That he doesn't seem to be a great priority necessarily, midfield solidity. So we'll have to wait and see. We'll maybe talk Aaron Connolly in a bit. Fletch, have you got any thoughts on the weekend?
Goals, lots of goals. From what I said earlier about South, yeah. No, but I can see with Sunderland having scored the most goals, both teams having lots of shots in their games, something is going to fly into the back of the net for me. It's just a question of which way. And I've been obviously very negative during the start of the season, but this trip to Turkey and the performance against Antalyaspor has just calmed things down a bit. I think the big takeaway from it is, even though the result in the long term is irrelevant, there seems to be a bit of progression there. Seems to be a little bit more of a settled look about them, even though you've mentioned about the midfield solidity, Burnsy. I think there was some more shoots of positivity going forward. Maybe another step in getting to understand Tim Walter's philosophy.
I just asked Prutts something, because it was an article you did, Baz, and I don't know whether it's unusual or not these days, but he mentioned that you mentioned that Tim Walter was now taking the players training on a match day morning. Yes? Just, nod. Yeah?
Only
we're doing training on a match day morning.
When they've got an evening game.
Right. Okay. Is that standard, Prutts?
I've seen it different with different managers. Some would, and it depends what their definition of training is. You could do set pieces. You could walk through things. You could have a light jog and a stretch and a chat about what was coming on, or they'd leave you to your own devices, and it was kind of sealed for the game later on. So it's not beyond comprehension in my eyes. It's just a case potentially maybe of using that time. Obviously, it's completely different with a 3 o'clock game and absolutely a non-starter with a lunchtime game. But to get the lads up and out of bed and working on a couple of bits, a few reminders, it's not too left field a thing to do.
Burnsy, I spoke to Tim Walter about it at length, and his attitude was very much, match days when you play like tea time or in the evening, as they will on Wednesday against Burnley, are really long, boring days for the players, particularly away from home when they're stuck in a hotel. They might go, Prutts, you know this from your playing days. I guess you'd go for a walk or something. You'd meet for a meeting, have food. But Tim said to me, he was like, they're really boring. So, it's not like he gets them out and they do a rigorous training session. It's more of a kind of just to get the body moving, give them something to do, basically, rather than sit in their room, sleep, play on the Xbox, PlayStation, Game Boy, do whatever, and get them going and get them out, get them some fresh air, maybe work on a couple of things. But they are pretty light sessions. So it's just something he wants because he thinks they're bored. You know what?
It's funny that, isn't it? Because only in and I do this as a fully paid up member of what used to be a footballer, but I mean, and obviously you're paraphrasing what he says, but it's like looking after primary school kids, isn't it? The professional athletes, you've got a game tonight, you're getting paid very well. I trust you to do exactly what you need to do to be as good as you can tonight. I don't give a flying if you're bored. It's your career and your job. So it's just funny that in football, got to keep them occupied. Yeah. No, professional athletes. Sorry. If you want breakfast at that time, have your breakfast at that time. Want your lunch at that, you need to sleep. You do what's best for you to be the best part of this team. But in football, it's come on, let's keep it. You know what I mean? Let's keep them occupied. It's just funny, isn't it? The perception of it.
So on the subject of Sunderland, and obviously, so coming into it on the back of 3 wins, and obviously then that setback at Norwich. But you look at the 6 games now until the break, and then it's flat out until March. 6 games. You've got Sunderland at home on Sunday afternoon, and then you've got Burnley at home on Wednesday night. Then you've got the 3 promoted clubs: Derby away, Portsmouth at home, Oxford United away, and then you finish with West Brom at home. How do you see that block of 6, but specifically the next 2 home games against the top 2, or not the 2 of the top 3?
Was it Oxford at home or away?
Away.
Well, Oxford, that's where the majority of their points are coming from at home. Pompey, obviously, in dire need of a win, but and Derby away. Again, Derby way better at home than they have been on the road. So, I mean, all those teams that you mentioned there, like I said, barring Pompey, who was second bottom, are all above City. So they're all tough. You mentioned Burnley, of course. That's a very, very tough one, given potentially the couple of weeks that Scott's had to work with all the players that he's brought in, obviously barring the ones that have been away on international duty, and teams that have, as you say, attempting to re-establish themselves in the Championship and making a very good fist of it. Oxford and Derby on the same points as City, but above them in the table. So I'm not saying the games against the ones near the top of 3 hits because they're not. It's a City side that made a managerial change to absolutely compete with that. I don't think the division's as strong as it was last year. There's not 3 standouts. Obviously, barring Sheffield United's points deduction, they'd have been top and they remain unbeaten. But having watched Sunderland, having seen Burnley, having seen West Brom, Leeds, Watford, Norwich, all the teams that are above City, they're all absolutely beatable. Absolutely beatable. But it's a case of how chastened City are by losing to a Norwich City side that has got an absolute goal scorer in Borja Sainz, who's joint top, isn't he, now with Josh Maja, and a player like Josh Sargent who can cause a lot of problems. So I'll be intrigued to see what the return is after these few games, because it goes back to this chat we've had probably for the best part of nearly a season and a half now of what City believe themselves to be. If they're mid-table, then you'll have a real hit and miss set of results in this, and Fletcher's aboard him and he's gone. But the yardstick that City are going to compare themselves with the rest of the division. These are a great spread of games to work out where they are, because there's no divine right for them to beat a promoted side in Oxford or Derby just because they were 7th in the Championship last season. So I think maybe looking at the ones maybe is a little bit of a misdirection from what the division looks like, because every single one of those, Pompey need to win at some stage. They've got good players. They've found it as a brutal return to the Championship after such a long time away. But as for the rest of them, there's absolutely no. They're all winnable. That's the positive thing I'd say from the City's point of view. They're all winnable, but they're all as well very, very tricky games.
Fraught with danger. Fletch, how do you see the next block of games, but particularly the next 2 at home?
You might as well have asked me to do astrophysics, Baz, or something, because I haven't got a clue. I think
that is the truth of where we're at, though, isn't it? You don't know what you're going to get. No,
you don't. And I think goals is something that I can see as a certainty, but it's just a question of and a degree of how many go in each net, really. It would be a massive confidence boost if you can beat Sunderland and Burnley, that's for sure. I think that would shut me up in particular, saying that there's a degree of teams that they can't play against and there's ones that they can play against. For those listening on audio, Prutts is baring his teeth, pointing his finger, telling him,
"Shut it, Fletcher.
Shut up, you negative Nigel, shut up." Well, we'll see. I think that these new, if you win these 2, you could easily win the next 4 or 5. And then everything we've said in the first part of the season becomes just redundant. So we shall see.
I don't think it does, because I don't think it does. Go on.
Why do you think it does?
All right. Can I just say, I think again, I read something you did where Tim Walter's actually talking about the playoffs, kicking on to the playoffs for this season. Wasn't there a quote from him? I should have written it down. I didn't. He's talking about doing that, which is good to hear, and we'll judge him against that. They're in a decent place. There are some stuff. They're still a work in progress, very much a work in progress, but they're in a decent place. I'm just going to give you a final thought. I love the thought of Prutts being told they had to train on the morning of a game, big, proper, grown-up professional athlete, tearing him away from either the Times crossword or fiddling with some motorbike carburettors or something like that. What? You want me to train? I'm sorting a bike out here.
What? The game's later on. I'm ready for that later on.
I'm a pro. I'm ready.
Covered in grease and wearing my overalls.
Yeah, I think
that's my final thought. I'm looking at the clock.
I think if they can get 4 points from these next two, I think I'm fairly confident they'll get something against Sunderland. The Burnley game worries me just because of how City play, and I just think Burnley will take them to pieces.
Do you reckon?
Yeah.
They're only doing that in the first couple of games of the season. I watched them against Preston. My God. I mean, it wasn't. I mean, by no means was it a classic game of football, but I don't think they had a shot on target after about something like 40-odd minutes. They scored the goal against Leeds United away from home. Kolyosho on the counter-attack after robbing, I think it was Firpo. Didn't have a shot on target after half an hour. This team can win games. It knows how to suffocate a game and sit on a game and stop the other side. Yeah. This isn't Vincent Kompany's Burnley by any stretch of the imagination. Now, don't get me wrong. They might have had 2 weeks under Scott and they might blast City to pieces. But what I've seen so far, it's not the same one.
That's a good point as well, actually, to be fair. And I think that was always the accusation of Fulham about Scott, wasn't it? That he perhaps, similar, maybe in some respects, similar to Liam at City, that given the quality of players at his disposal, probably was a bit too pragmatic. So, look, I think if City could get 4 points from the net, if they beat Sunderland, I think that's fantastic. It almost takes the pressure off against Burnley if they could get you want them to win the game, of course you do, and you go into the game wanting to win clearly. But I think if a point against Burnley would be a decent result. But obviously, it's all conjecture, and we're all, I like you. I think Pompey is a must-win at home given their form. The 2 away games, given as a team, and it was the same for City coming up. You always look at the teams coming up, saying in any league, your home form has got to be bob on. If you're going to survive and flourish and build and stay up, it's your home form that will go a long way to doing that. And I think obviously Derby, I think, won 10 in a row before losing to Norwich, but they shouldn't have lost to Norwich because, as we know, Norwich's goal was a bit dodgy again. And then they responded to that with a fairly routine win over QPR. So Derby at home are difficult. They keep clean sheets for fun. Away they're rubbish. Oxford, again, really good at home. And so it's a really, like you say, Prutts, I echo that really. The 6 games, and obviously Albion at the back end of it, the next 6 games are fascinating in many ways. But before we go, because I know we're pushed for time now, Burnsy, you wanted to mention Aaron Connolly, who we will expect to see on Sunday. He scored in the 6-0 21s thrashing of Derby, and then he scored against, was it Sheffield Wednesday? No, sorry, Huddersfield in earlier in the week. So, yeah.
No, I would. It's maybe a discussion for another day. I don't think we've got enough time to talk about it. He basically came out and said, "Look, I've got alcohol problems, etc., etc." That's probably better shared than not shared, but I'm not sure we've got time to talk about it. Looking at the clock, we'll maybe discuss it next week.
Let me very quickly nip what I think a little bit about Aaron. I think he's knocking on the door of about 120 games, isn't he? He's 24 years old. He'll be 25 in January. Needs more time on the pitch. Needs more minutes on the pitch. That in turn, potentially, and I'm not simplifying anything because, as you quite rightly say, Burnsy, to come out and say that out in public, it's a very brave thing to do. The focus, the attitude and the energy of his life and the good things that he can do focused into his football away from distractions such as those, I think, from what you read, is better for him mentally in the long run. So from a purely human point of view, you hope that this next move does end up with lots of games under his belt, because seemingly that's where his really happy place is, isn't it? And I don't suppose you can't do anything but wish him all the best, because there is a very, very good player in there. Just unfortunately, City didn't see it enough, did they?
Well, that's the thing. And he showed glimpses at City. If you think about the start of last season, he was electric. And you did feel that he'd obviously had a lot of problems off the field from bursting on the scene at Brighton. He went out to Italy, was clogging around in the second division. Liam and Hull City invested in him. They believed in him. They gave him a chance. They brought him back, and it looked like he might get his career back on the track under a manager that knew how to do. He's clearly a complex character, and under Liam was a guy that knew him and felt you could get the best out of him. Now he got poleaxed by Angus Gunn in January.
Yeah,
that Norwich game, he was never the same. And it turns out, as he said himself in his club interview with Sunderland, that he went during it seems to be the timeline seemed to match up, that while he was recovering from that injury, he was unavailable for Hull City, and it seems like that was the time he went and got the treatment he spoke about. And it is ultimately, it's a real shame that City couldn't get the best out of him for the reasons that Aaron has spoken publicly about, because he was a good finisher, and Sunderland has seen that in training, and we've seen the couple of goals he scored, albeit for the under-21s for Sunderland, that he knows where the net is, he knows how to finish, and he won't start at the weekend, but coming off the bench, he's a player that City will know about, but will have to be wary of, because on his day, Aaron Connolly is a really, really sharp finisher. And as I say, as you say, Prutts, he's barely 120 games at the age of 24. He's poor.
Not enough.
It's not enough, and he needs to. You wonder how many more chances he will be given to prove himself. And City gave him a short-term deal last year. It was only a 1-year deal. If Aaron Connolly had been fit, firing, and his head was in the right place, I don't have any doubt that even with Rossini going, that Connolly would have stayed, because City would have had a decent goal scorer in their ranks. And they missed, let's be honest, the back end of last season after January, they missed him because Liam Delap was out injured. Ohio, the sharp move on the pitch at least didn't work. Ohio wasn't played a lot, scored when he did, but wasn't played a lot. They missed him. They needed somebody like Aaron Connolly. If Aaron Connolly could have chipped in with 5 or 6 goals in that final half of the season, they may well have got in the playoffs. So his unavailability was a real blow for Hull City. So, from, as you say, Prutts, from a human point of view, it takes a lot of balls to speak up, and he's done that. But he's also got to take responsibility now. He's been given another chance on the pitch. He's got to repay that faith, because he was given a lot of faith at Hull City. It didn't work out. He's got another chance at an incredibly big football club, and not every player gets that opportunity.
So to not touch on it, Burnsy, we've really touched on it.
Yeah, I know. I come from a background where you look at the clock and think this is an hour's podcast.
I know. Burnsy, as I've always said, that respect for you as a broadcaster that I've got knows no bounds, because as you well know at the Beeb, if you run over anything, you get your hands chopped off, don't you? So it's a skill work into time, obviously one that myself, Fletch and Baz have absolutely not got at all. That's why any Muppet can do a podcast. Jesus.
And on that bombshell, thank you so much, everybody, for listening, for watching. We have gone well over our allocated time that we don't really have. But we dominated by the news of Tan Kesler. I'm sure there'll be some news in the near future about that. And that's it. 3 points, hopefully, on Sunday. Burnsy, thank you very much. Fletch,
cheers, everybody.
AKA Tony Pulis, thank you very much.
Cheers. I'm off to go and look at hot tubs in a catalogue.
Catalogue.
Yeah.
My God. Welcome to the 90s, Fletch. Love it.
That sounds a bit top shelf to me.
Thanks very much, Prutts.
My pleasure. Loved it.
Goodbye, everybody, and keep getting in touch at the 1904 Club on Twitter.